Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. What's today? The 10th or so of September. And I wanted to share a little bit more um, from the last video I did on overcoming adversity. Um, and as I reviewed that video, I thought, oh, wow. Um People would really want to know this piece, or maybe I could expand more on that particular piece, and I think I'll be doing more of that. Right now, I've just been producing a number of different videos on some popular topics, but I'm going to start to drill down into those. Excuse me, and unpackage those a bit more for people. Um, so I want to pick up on a theme that I was talking about in the last video, as I said, regarding overcoming adversity. And really, what that video encapsulated, it summarized, it suggested that oftentimes, I should take that back and say not oftentimes, but all the times, as mature adults, we increase our understanding in the fact, in the truth that in order to grow, we need to come up alongside something bigger than ourselves. We need to be engaged, and I spoke about this before in another video on discipline. We need to be involved in a study, a wisdom study. We need to be involved in the active pursuit of growing ourselves up through the ingestion and the digestion of wisdom teachings. And in the last video, I used the story of the caterpillar transforming into the butterfly, and part of that story was that the butterfly, while still in the chrysalis, was struggling against the hard shell of that chrysalis, and it needed to do that. It needed to do that in order to grow. It needed to do that in order to become what it was meant to become. And so in that last video, I was really wanting, in a big way, people to begin to see that much of the way society addresses adversity, if you will, or challenges and trials, we've been taught to address it from the wrong position. Not unlike the child in the story that tried to rescue the caterpillar from its trial, we now realize that that's immature. So it may be helpful for you to look at the video, the first one on adversity, because that's what the story starts to talk about. It's that that it's built into life, that we experience trials, and that's necessary for all living things. And it's necessary for us as human beings to begin to develop our character, to deepen our resilience. We mentioned in the last video that we're seeing over the last 10, 15 years more and more that it just seems like fewer and fewer human beings have significant resilience. I mean, you look at some of the different challenges and trials, whether that be, especially politically and socially, where it involves things like racial discrimination, issues between men and women, people of different sexual orientations, what have you. There's all this kind of divisive kinds of stuff going on right now. And again, think about the last U.S. political presidential election. Where when President Trump was in the race, and then of course as he won the race, people just melted down. I mean, this isn't the first time that people have not gotten their candidate chosen, or there have been adversities and trials that people have faced, and much more significant than that. But to watch people melt down because their candidate didn't get selected, or melt down, because their cause, whatever it is, isn't being embraced fully, or whatever it is. Just to watch all these folks melt down is, to me, is really an indication of a loss of resilience. And that loss of resilience, as I'm going to speak about, is really connected to a disconnect from a greater source of wisdom. I mean, again, we are living in an inflated tidal wave of indulgence and entitlement, and really, what drives that is an egocentricity and a narcissism and a grandiosity. In other words, it's very infantile, but it's all about the person. It's all about I me, the I me language, if you will. Not much about other or community. And so you see, in some ways, that the I don't want to say new wisdom, because this has been around, but it's just, the prevalent, maybe contemporary kinds of wisdom teachings out there is all about I me. Everybody has their own, has the right to be special, or everybody gets the trophy, as people will say, or everybody wants to get out of college and make a six-figure job, a six-figure earning right away. Everybody has a right to this and a right to that, and so that's all a product of entitlement and indulgence. Again, the underpinnings of that are the immaturities of narcissism, grandiosity, and egocentricity. Again, which is indicative of a disconnect, or I want to say a walk away, a push away from a greater authority, a greater wisdom. And so, the caterpillar story speaks to that. That the child, disconnected from a source of wisdom, begins to make a mess of things, becomes its own worst enemy, creates its own demise, not only of itself, but of other creatures, of other things around it. And so, yeah, that's what developmentally we do, but we do it through our entire life. We are geared to seek out something greater, a greater wisdom, and pursue it. When we don't, we pay a price. I'm going to share a quote with you here real quick, one that I really enjoy. It's like this. It says, it's not what you see that counts, it's from where you see it. It's not what you see that you should give credence to, it's from where you see it, is another way to say it. You see, in an I-me generation, in a generation of entitlement and indulgence, the individual is the center of the world, the center of the universe. That's the egocentricity. And so whatever that person sees, they believe it to be true. And so they believe that whatever they see is true, whatever they see is fact, whatever they see is, beyond question. And so when it is questioned, you get these meltdowns that we were looking at, or that we were seeing all over the news. So the quote, yes, it's not so important what you see, it's from where you see it. And for me, that suggests, or it goes back to the motto of our parent leadership group, which is this, which is to grow up is to give up. To grow up is to give up. So as we grow older, we give things up. We give things up throughout life. Developmentally speaking, an infant has to give up attachments to physical things. Adolescents give up attachments to emotions. And adults give up attachment to ideas. Well, why? Why does it work that way? Well, let's go back to the story of the caterpillar. The caterpillar, we were talking about this in the last video, is struggling against something. The walls of the chrysalis. Something has become crystallized. Something has become solid. And so the caterpillar struggles against those things that is surrounding it, created by nature, created by itself, is now encapsulated by this crystallized substances. It's created, almost a bit of a jail cell for it itself. But we human beings do that as well, but we don't do it obviously in the same way that a caterpillar would have to have that experience. But we surround ourselves with solidified perspectives, solidified thoughts. And so oftentimes when we're struggling with life, we're actually struggling with what we've created, what we're hanging on to. And so that's where the parent leadership groups talks about giving some things up. Whatever it is we're hanging on to, that's more likely the struggle than what we think it is. So it's not so much important for us as human beings to focus on what we think is, what we see, but it's more important to understand where we're coming from. It's from where I see it that's more important than what I see. And so the mature task is not to be validated in what we see. It is to give up. It's to trade one position for another. To give up our position, whatever our solidified stance is, we want to begin to loosen up around that and to be able to set it aside, to be able to give it up so we can see things differently. See things in a more inspiring way. In the caterpillar story, the child was seeing things from a particular perspective, which we knew was immature. How could a child not be anything other than immature? So from its immature perspective, all it could generate was a story that what was going on for the caterpillar was wrong. It was scary. It was tragic. And so, the immature child reacts to that in an immature way and intervenes in it and actually, again, cripples the butterfly. The child needed to give up that perspective, but give it up for what? Well, something better. But who had the better perspective? It was the adult. It was that greater authority. It was something bigger than the child that held that vision, that held that what the truth was, and the truth was that everything was fine. This was perfectly normal. But the child had to turn to a greater source of wisdom. Why? In order to give up what it was entertaining, in order to give up what it was hanging on to for something better. Now, this reminds me of a quote from Einstein. And Einstein said this: "Everything should be made simple, but not necessarily simpler." Everything should be made simple, but not simpler. So this is a really simple thing to understand, isn't it? In some ways. And I describe it oftentimes like this. People come into my office or into my boardroom or what have you, and we'll be doing a family session or individual session. And I'll take a particular position. I'll sit down and they'll sit down. And most of the time, they'll be seated closer to the door and I'll be seated a little farther back in the room. We both have taken a position. They're seated in this position, I'm seated in this position. And I'll say something simple like, here's one of the ideas I have about conflict and tension. I get that you sense that something's not right. But let me tell you probably what it is and what it isn't. It's not what you think it is. It's not what you're seeing. That's the red herring. The problem is the position you've taken. You're in the wrong position and you can't see the way through. And when you can't see the way through, you get distressed. And rather than just being accountable and responsible, you start to blame that on somebody else, like your son or your daughter. or your wife or your husband, or or vice versa, teen to parent. So the good news is you're right. Something's off. Something needs to be let go of. Something needs to come to an end. But it's not what you think it is. It's not what you see. It's where you're standing. It's the position that you're taking. It's the perspective that you have. Now, this could be a bigger discussion. So what, the position that somebody takes can be called a lot of different things. It can be called a role somebody's played. Somebody can be kind of clinging on or stuck to a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism. There are different kinds of masks and facades that we can be coming from, places we can be coming from, positions that we have taken. Some of them could be trauma induced, others not. But the idea here is that it's not what the person sees that's the problem. It's not what the person sees that needs to be let go of. And what happens when somebody isn't willing to shift their position is that usually that means that when you're in a relationship, then a person has to leave. When parents, for instance, are really wedded to their position, they can't see a solution. That's where they come to see me. But if they continue to indulge in that position, that will kind of seal the fate of where that has to go. In other words, somebody has to leave, because then they start even saying that. If Billy weren't here, it'd be great. Or I hear parents say a lot, when little Kathy's gone, when little, Amanda's gone, everything's great. We all get along well. It's so when this person is gone or when this person leaves, everything will get better. That's where it ends up, unfortunately, when people don't elevate their thinking. As the quote says, it's not what you see, it's where you're coming from. That's the issue. It's not what you see, but from where you're looking at it, the position you've taken. So I often, when I'm working with parents, to say, where you're positioned right now, what can you see? I can see your bookcase. I can see this, this, this. Can you see a way out? No. You know what I can see from where I'm at? I can see a doorway. And I know there's a way out. See, this is the gift that I give as a counselor. I can see a way out. But here's the catch. They can get it, right? That's simple. That is so simple, isn't it? But it's not simpler, because here's the catch. In order for you to see what I see, guess what? You're going to have to give up your position. You're going to have to leave where you're at and come over here with me. Because as long as you stay in your position, you will not see a way through. Now, then the question might be, well, how interested are you in seeing a way through? Well, most people come to me because they're in high levels of distress. You'd think people would jump out of their chairs to come and stand where I'm standing or sit where I'm sitting so they could see the way out too. But that isn't life. Isn't that interesting? And that's another discussion, because it has a lot to do with entitlement and indulgence and other kinds of hidden agendas. But the question is, in that moment, is why would you want to stay in that position? Given the distress that it's causing you and the turmoil and the conflict in your family, why would you want to stay there? Well, let me just kind of shortcut this for you and say we're invested. People are highly invested in their positions. Obviously more than they know, because on the one hand, you've got somebody going, oh man, I want things to change so badly. Oh, really? That's great. Okay, well, here's the thing. I'm going to give you something real simple. It's just a shift in your position. You just come stand here with me. You just start kind of working on the ideas that we talk about and that we get you. And don't work on the ones that you've been working on, because obviously that's not producing the result that you want. So leave those aside and work on these. That journey right there is it for some people is a journey they never make in their lifetime. Some people make it quicker. But for a person to be willing to give up their position, set it aside, and come and try on a new position, that's the greater challenge. So as I speak to this, like I said, I always like to think about whether what's coming out of my mouth is what I call close to the plate, because I'm a baseball player, so I know that I get a little bit of wiggling room on each side of the plate as a pitcher. But is what's coming out of my mouth at all close to what are coming out of the mouths of other wisdom teachers or wisdom teachings? Well, that's why I've included some of these quotes. Einstein saying that, or Vernon Howard or Khalil Gibran, or referring to different spiritual disciplines, things of this nature. Because understanding the nature of myself, and what I've just explained is that I can't turn to myself oftentimes to know what the truth is, to gain clarity. I have to look up to wisdom teachers in order to see the way through. Not any different than that child in the story had to look up to a greater source of wisdom. So, I wish you were here. I wish we could talk, because I'd love to hear how this is, how this is settling for you. Let me check my time. 21 minutes here. I think I'm going to do another quick video after this, because then people are going to ask me, as they always do, John, so you talk a lot about turning towards a wisdom teaching. Okay, how? What do I turn towards? So I'm going to wrap this one up, do the next one, which will be on the wisdom teaching, maybe part 3 of adversity, wisdom teachings, and I'll throw some stuff at you, and you see how that sits. Okay? But for now, again, really sit with this. Like I was saying, is if we're going to buy into this idea that we're transforming into something more beautiful, as what the caterpillar story says, and that part of that we're going to struggle. So really think about more deeply about what you're struggling with in light of the wisdom teachings of the parable, like the quote, which is, it's not what you see, it's where you're seeing it from. Again, Einstein said, more on this as well. So, one of his quotes that I enjoy has more to do with, he says it's not so much a perfection of means as it is a confusion of aims. In other words, we have all this, we live in the information age, we have all this capacity. Problem is, we're just not aimed at the right target. We're not aimed at the right thing. Which is another way of saying, it's again where, it's not what you think it is. It's where you're coming from. So take a look at yourself, engage in self-reflection. Take the wisdom teachings that are coming to you and let them work on you. People often say to me, and I should be saving this for the next video, but people often say, John, I don't understand that teaching. I don't understand what that teacher's saying. So, that's ridiculous. I don't understand it. That's silly. That's, that isn't right. And I always say, our task as mature adults is to not dismiss what wisdom teachers are saying, but to sit with it, let it work on us. If you say that you truly don't understand something, then the problem isn't with the wisdom teaching. And that's one of the challenges, again, that we have as part of this entitlement wave that we're in right now, is that as adults and as a mature society, we're kind of dummying down everything. We're lowering the bar all over the place. You know, we used to expect people to rise up to meet the challenge. Now we just feel like we should lower the challenge or not have one at all. So, um, I'll leave that with you. There may be some things that you're not understanding. I hope I can try to make it like Einstein said, is make it simple. It's just not going to be simpler. You know, the bar is not going to lower for us, folks. It's just life. That is the way that it is. Although we can make it simple. We can make it simple for our kids. That's an easy thing to explain. We can tell the caterpillar story. We can give an example of the positions as the way that I did it and make it easy to understand. It's just not going to be easy to do. And at that point, we can lower the bar. But like the caterpillar story says, then we end up crippling people for life. So if you really love and respect the people that you're with and your sons and daughters, you won't lower the bar. But you'll make it simple. And you'll be by their side, and you'll be an encourager. You'll be a source of inspiration. You'll be a source of caring and compassion as they go through their trial. So I'll end that there, and I'll get the next one going. Have a good day. Bye.